worship at First Unitarian Church of Rochester, New York. Our opening hymn, Listen, Open, Serve, is based on the mission, values, and ends of our church community. The text was written by the Crescendo Fund Committee, and the tune is by Sarah Davis, the winner of the Crescendo Fund Hymn Competition. Please join me in singing Listen, Open, Serve.
Listen to all hearts and minds, experiences of all kinds. Through inquiry we find what's true, as hard as it can be to do. Come, listen, open, serve with me together in community. Our hearts are open to be changed by new perspectives rearrange. Success and blunder light our way, transformed by wonder every day. Come, listen, open, serve with me together in community. In partnership we now commit to humble service. We admit that justice starts with you and me. Unlearning white supremacy. Come, listen, open, serve with me together in community.
Welcome to online worship at First Unitarian Church of Rochester. Some of you are joining us from right here, perhaps even right down the street from me, where we're leading worship here from our homes as we continue to keep each other safe and lead each other into the world that we dream is possible. Some of you are joining from much further away, and I see the ways in which some of you are starting to offer greetings in the chat. I ask and invite all of you, if you would like to do so, let us know where you're chiming in from. Maybe you're at a particular neighborhood in Rochester or on the exact right place of the block to be able to see your neighbor's view of also watching church on their porch. We'd love to know. I'm Reverend Sherry. I'm the lead minister here at First Unitarian, and leading worship with me today is Tommy, who you just saw. Brock and Arson are helping lead our music ministry along with Tommy. Shannon Foos and Grace Carswell and Reverend Margalie Belizaire are helping lead worship. It wouldn't be Sunday morning without all of you, and you too help lead our time together. Help us gather our spirits and prepare ourselves for the week ahead. Our mission here at First Unitarian is through spiritual connection in community. We listen deeply to others and ourselves. We open to wonder and transformation, and we serve together with love and humility. Right after the service, I want you to stick around for coffee and connection with fellow people from First Unitarian, visitors from other congregations, and newcomers. Just one quick little, I want to pretend like it's not bragging, but quite frankly, it is. I'm really proud of this community. Last week, a few people, just a few, a small gathering from this congregation got together on Wednesday night as part of our UU the Vote effort, as part of our effort to engage voters and make sure that people have a voting plan in November, make sure that they're registered and that they've got a safe plan to be able to exercise their democratic rights. And this small group of people reached over 250 people that night. That's a huge impact. And when we gather together, we're able to do incredible things. And that's part of what we're reminded of each and every week. And so I hope that you'll join us in future UU the Votes events. uuthevote.org/phone banking has a ton of different options. And you can gather with people here in Rochester or across the country to help promote democracy. Let's settle into our Sunday together. Take a breath with me. we settle into this sacred time and place. And please join me in our unison words for our chalice lighting. May the flame we now kindle inspire us to use our power to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, and to seek liberation in the fullness of community.
Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, is the highest holy day of the year for Jews, and for them it begins at sundown. It's a time of wiping the slate clean of wrongdoings of the past year. A friend of mine called me this week reminding me that the holiday would begin today. I have to admit, I've been feeling very discouraged this week with the news of Justice Ginsburg's death and the serious political divide gripping our nation, and the distressing words coming from leaders. I really wish that somehow there was a way to wipe the slate clean of the wrongdoings of the past year. I keep looking around for encouragement, and I find it hard to find. But this week, here's what I found. At my daily desk, one of 3 desks I have piled high in my house with things I need to do, I have a framed quote by Mary Pickford, who was an actress who was one of the original founders of the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences. Here's the quote I see every day. Today is a new day. You will get out of it just what you put into it. If you have made mistakes, even serious mistakes, there is another chance for you. And supposing you have tried and failed again and again, you may have a fresh start any moment you choose. For this thing we call failure is not the falling down, but the staying down. And part of the reason I come to First U is encouragement that things can be better, and for help to not stay down in failures. Today is a new day.
Our next hymn is by Dan Nichols, a rock musician and song leader in the Reform Jewish tradition. It's based on a traditional blessing, Asher Yatzar. We'll sing it both in English and in Hebrew. I thank you for my life, body and soul. Help me realize I am beautiful and whole. I'm perfect the way I am, and a little broken too. I will live each day as a gift I give to you. Let's try that together. I thank you for my life, body and soul. Help me realize I am beautiful and whole. I'm perfect the way I am, and a little broken too. I will live each day as a gift I give to you.
invite you now into the spiritual practice of generosity. Every Sunday, we take our offering, which is split between our church and organizations in our wider community that lead us in the work of justice and compassion. Today, our collection will be split with So Green Rochester. They provide services to help increase the self-sufficiency of young people and adults by teaching them needlework skills and providing tools and materials at no cost. Through teacher-led classes and sewing opportunities, they encourage the community to create new items using rescued fabric and supplies, ensuring sustainability by keeping these supplies out of landfills. There are a number of ways to give, including Venmo, Simple Church, or mailing in a check. Please give generously to support the work of So Green Rochester and First Unitarian Church.
As we ponder and even rest in the love of this community, I invite you into a moment of meditation. Let's first ground ourselves. Sit comfortably with your eyes closed if that feels comfortable for you. Or keep them in a soft gaze, staring about 1 to 2 feet in front of you. Starting with your feet, going all the way up to the top of your head. Scan your body with your mind's eyes for any areas of tension. As you do this, if you see any tension, let it go if you can. And if you can't let it go, if you can't let go of that tension, simply notice it and wonder what's keeping it there. I now ask you to meditate on the words of this prayer, which will be followed by a moment of silence. Spirit of love, Spirit of forgiveness, Spirit of beginning anew, be with us as we reflect on the moments when we might not have been our best selves, 2020, Spirit, has been a year full of pain and suffering at so many levels for so many people. Many have been left alone and others isolated by a pandemic that demands so many sacrifices. Here on our planet, souls have been leaving their bodies at such a high rate. Here in Rochester, we're glimpsing up close at the brutality that many all over this country experience daily. Here in our faith tradition, we mourn the loss of faithful leaders, including Elandria Williams. This is just a week after having lost our very own Kathy Mader. And here at the personal level, we meet countless daily struggles that simply show up at our doors. Under such stress, under so many relentless demands on our bodies, minds, hearts, and spirits, we fail at times to get it right, to have each other's backs, to be patiently present, to love radically. Our intentions might have been pure, yet the impacts were still harmful. For all those times, for all those moments, may we make amends whenever we have the opportunity. And may we begin anew with the commitment to do better. May we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
much time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the selfishness that set us apart and alone.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For losing sight of our unity.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
I had the great good fortune of ending up in a first grade class in Rochester, New York, at the 12 Corners School with Eleanor Jane West, who was a remarkable teacher and who had all of us writing poetry in first grade. The kids who couldn't write yet, she would take dictation. At the end of the year, she gave us all a book of the poetry we had written. So between my parents really having poetry around and reciting bits that they remembered, using it as quotes to illustrate things they were talking about, and this amazing teacher that I had in first grade, I just never got the message that poetry was something that, only certain specially talented people had access to. I just started writing poetry. And I wrote throughout my teens. Writing poetry was a lot of what got me through moving from Puerto Rico to the United States when I was 13. I wrote it after the Orlando massacre, which hit me really, really hard. There are many horrible things that happen in the world, and they touch us in different ways based on what our relationships are to them. And one of the things I was very conscious about was that half of the people who died in that act of violence were Puerto Rican. And the reason there are many Puerto Ricans in Orlando, Florida, is economic exile. That colonialism has devastated the economy of Puerto Rico. Young people's unemployment is sky high. And so a lot of young people are going to Central Florida, which is now, I think, the second largest population of Puerto Ricans outside Puerto Rico, and fastest growing, I believe. So I was in need of something hopeful to lift me up. And I've written a number of poems that are my versions of traditional Jewish prayers, and I'll probably read this again later. Ve'ahavta. This is a prayer that has to do with, the original prayer talks about the core beliefs of Judaism about, saying them when you get up and when you lie down, and putting them in the mezuzah by the door and inscribing them everywhere, like really living one's principles. Say these words when you lie down and when you rise up, when you go out and when you return, in times of mourning and in times of joy. Inscribe them on your doorposts, embroider them on your garments, tattoo them on your shoulders, teach them to your children your neighbors, your enemies. Recite them in your sleep here in the cruel shadow of empire. Another world is possible. Thus spoke the prophet Roque Dalton. Altogether they have more death than we, but altogether we have more life than they. There is more bloody death in their hands than we could ever wield, unless we lay down our souls to become them, and then we will lose everything. So instead, imagine winning. This is your sacred task. This is your power. Imagine every detail of winning, the exact smell of the summer streets in which no one has been shot, the muscles you have never unclenched from worry gone soft as newborn skin, the sparkling taste of food when we know that no one on earth is hungry, that the beggars are fed, that the old man under the bridge and the woman wrapping herself in thin sheets in the back seat of a car, and the children who suck on stones, nest under a flock of roofs that keep multiplying their shelter. Lean with all your being towards that day when the poor of the world shake down a rain of good fortune out of the heavy clouds and justice rolls down like waters. Defend the world in which we win as if it were your child. It is your child. Defend it as if it were your lover. It is your lover. When you inhale and when you exhale, breathe the possibility of another world into the 37.2 trillion cells of your body until it shines with hope. Then imagine more. Imagine rape is unimaginable. Imagine war is a scarcely credible rumor, that the crimes of our age, the grotesque inhumanities of greed, the sheer and astounding shamelessness of it, the vast fortunes made by stealing lives, the horrible normalcy it came to have, is unimaginable to our heirs, the generations of the free. Don't waver. Don't let despair sink its sharp teeth into the throat with which you sing. Escalate your dreams. Make them burn so fiercely that you can follow them down any dark alleyway of history and not lose your way. Make them burn clear as a starry drinking gourd over the grim fog of exhaustion, and keep walking. Hold hands, share water, keep imagining, so that we and the children of our children's children may live.
This is the type of reading brought to us by the poet and revolutionary Aurora Levins Morales, a Puerto Rican Jewish woman who, as you heard, spent first grade here in Rochester. And as I learned when I emailed her this week to ask her if we could use her poem, her sacred text, in our worship, grew up in Unitarian Universalist Youth Group in Chicago, shortly after moving from Puerto Rico to the States, to the mainland. It's the type of reading that really I should probably just read again and then take a seat. A type of reading that carries both the power and the hope that I think we as a people not only are capable of, but must continue to hold. I'll just read a bit of it again. She moves too quickly, I will say, for me to fully encapsulate all that it carries for us. But it's the type of poem that draws from a legacy of recited sacred text in Judaism that deserves being said again. Say these words when you lie down and when you rise up, when you go out and when you return, in times of mourning and in times of joy. Inscribe them on your doorposts. Embroider them on your garments, tattoo them on your shoulders, recite them in your sleep, teach them to your children, your neighbors, your enemy. Here in this cruel shadow of empire, another world is possible. Imagine winning. This is your sacred task. This is the purpose that the poet gives to us, the purpose that in her Jewish tradition, she says that God gives to us. In this short time that we have between birth and death, how might our lives be a blessing? This is the day we give up on despair, not on anguish, nor pain, nor struggle, nor suffering, but despair. The evening tonight marks the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the holiest day in the whole year. And many of you might be more familiar with Christian concepts of atonement, that joining of divinity and humanity that incorporates the very word itself. Atonement comes from the English at-one-ment, a concept that's in Christianity given to Jesus Christ. But in Jewish tradition, in rabbinical Judaism, atonement can't be done by anyone else, can't be done by anyone but you. And in this week, Jews are called to atone, to repent, to seek restoration from sins, from ways in which we've fallen short and missed the mark, from ways in which we haven't lived out of our deepest values. Jews are called to atone for sins against God by repenting and seeking forgiveness from God. But when it comes to mistakes and relationships that have broken between people, you can't bring that to God in rabbinical Judaism, at least not first. There's no spiritual bypassing, no way to pray and say, well, that's water under the bridge, and today's a new day, so all is well. Today is a new day, and all will be well. But one cannot proclaim that without being in relationship. One cannot seek restitution, reparation, forgiveness, and restoration without being in relationship. And so when it comes to sins against each other, ways in which we've missed the mark or fallen short, we must seek forgiveness in relationship. And only once a bridge has been extended to another person is restoration possible. Now, the choice to grant forgiveness, that's not a guarantee. There's no forced or fake unity, no way in which this embodied practice guarantees that that bridge that you are trying to build will be fully formed. No way in which your individual effort can fully hold you alone. This embodied practice, this living, breathing heart work of building and repairing relationship, no matter what gaps it has in its final results, though, it's the only first step, the only way forward. The sacred practices of our Jewish ancestors, our siblings, our friends here among us, those of you who are members, both Unitarian, Universalist, and Jewish, it teaches us something about what it means to live fully. If today is another day, a day, again, in which we shake our necks free from despair, three things are needed. We must first be able to imagine that reparation, restoration, repair is possible. We have to imagine a world in which our relationships have been restored, a way in which not that we are perfect, but that we have atoned for what we have done wrong, that we can recognize and seek a different way of being. Imagine winning, imagine a world in which no one dies in the street. This sacred imaginative task is ours to take up if we are to follow alongside the Jewish practice. We have to be able to imagine a world in which peace is well funded, in which meals with each other and housing for all and roofs overhead multiply into abundant shelter. We need to imagine a day in which our necks do not have boots upon them, or our feet are not in boots that do not step lightly. We have to imagine winning is this first sacred task. And having cast forward these gentle, small, and giant visions of paradise, we have to be able to articulate what we are seeking. We have to be able to name it aloud. And so I invite you into the chat now to name one thing that you imagine possible in this life, Now, I know some of you will be talking about grand political ideas. Some are seeking world peace, some are seeking healing, some are seeking just a good result to their surgery that's coming up next week, or a day with virtual school in which no one in this home cries. I invite you to name in the chat one way in which paradise, whether possible or not, can be articulated. And as you do that, let me tell you about this sacred task of imagining paradise that has three parts. Includes a second that you already know, that ancient Jewish tradition and lived contemporary practice rehearses again and again. None of these visions of paradise are ours alone. You may have heard, and if you weren't familiar, Reverend Margalie named this in her prayer earlier, but you may have heard that a young Unitarian Universalist leader this week died. Someone who is at the very top of Unitarian Universalist leadership, holding the highest possible leadership position in our denomination as co-moderator of the board of the Unitarian Universalist Association, but who was only 41. And so we all imagined that this elder, this decidedly younger elder, would have many, many years ahead of them of advocacy and activism and ushering in new visions of the future. This person, Elandria Williams, who used the pronoun E, touched many lives. People here in this congregation, but all across Unitarian Universalism, all across many spheres of American activism. And tributes to Elandria's spirit and legacy have been rolling in over the past few days. I expect that those memories will continue to pour in. He rests in peace and in power, and their memory is a blessing that calls each of us to the angels and the gladiators and the healers of our better nature. And so I expect that these tributes will continue for decades as the people that Elandria poured love into continue to do their work. But no matter how gorgeous and heart-wrenching and powerful what others are sharing, Elandria could always speak for themselves. And in a book that we give our young people when they bridge from our religious education program, E offers an account of when they were younger than they are now, a young adult in the Tennessee Valley UU congregation who was changed irreparably by an active shooter that rocked that church to its core. For those of you who have been in Unitarian Universalism for longer than a dozen years, you will remember when an armed man entered the sanctuary and killed 2 UUs. We speak today, a number of us, of mass shootings because it's a reality in our world, but this too is a reality. Elandria, when they found out, when they first heard that there had been a shooting, their mind started to race. They didn't know who had been killed. Had it been their mom, their friends' parents, religious educators, the people who had nurtured them their entire lives? Had it been the people that they disagree with in board meetings? Had it been the people that annoyed them at coffee hour? Had it been the people that they knew by sight but had never had a full conversation with? Elandria knew this in that very moment, and this realization stayed with them throughout their entire lives. No matter what issues I have with other Unitarian Universalists regarding our visions of God or spirit, no matter what issues I have with other Unitarian Universalists regarding our visions of justice and race and age, at the root of everything that we do is community and love and faith. That day, something larger than our individual beliefs rose up in my mind. I thought of the principles, values, and family that are the connective tissue of this faith community, and that held us in the weeks after that shooting, that held us months later on our church's anniversary, and held us still today. We're part of a connective tissue that holds the legacy and the future of this faith. We're the children of freedom fighters and visionaries and radical liberal theologians. We're the phoenix rising out of the ashes of the McCarthy era and the civil rights, women's, and queer liberation movement. We're the survivors and beneficiaries of youth-led and youth-focused programming that encouraged us to be change makers, boundary pushers, and institutionalists at the same time. We wear our faith as tattoos on our body and in our hearts as testaments to the blood, the tears, the dreams, and the inspirations of our community ancestors and elders. Alandria's closing words here about ancestors and elders, well, they are a part of that cloud of witnesses now. And as the tributes roll in, the thing I see again and again on Facebook and on Zoom calls and written on the tablets of the hearts of my colleagues and friends who live and breathe this faith so fully is this sense that being in relationship and being clear on what visions of paradise are do not need to interfere with each other, that we cannot achieve paradise in the ultimate sense, that we cannot imagine winning if we cannot imagine being together in the here and the now. If we cannot imagine what it means to be in right relationship, to listen, to grow, to be open to transformation with the people who know us best. And so this second act of imagining winning is to steep that vision of paradise into the here and the now, that grand political visions and abstract concepts that pull us forward must find expression in embodied practice, that the Jewish prayer, the Vaharta, that Aurora Levins Morales rewrites for the contemporary age, demands that it become a daily lived practice. So as we look around in our own lives, where might we find places to build relationship, to build understanding? These could be major, and you're welcome to share them in the chat or just inscribe them on the tablets of your heart as a goal for you to take up this coming week. Something about seeking repair with a family member, but it could also be the simple and small things. The breath before you respond. The commitment to put your phone face down on the table when dinner begins. This task is critical to imagining winning. This task that Alandria reminds us of, this important lesson, it's embedded in the Jewish practice as well. And so as you begin to share ideas, I hope that you'll see other things that folks are doing and imagine the ways that those might also be present in your life. Imagine a commitment that you can make in this coming week. I know it can take some time to shift from listening to typing. I know it can take some time from receiving to participating. I've got all the time in the world. I so appreciate your response when I invite you to participate. But the truth, of course, is that none of us have all the time in the world. The truth, of course, is that this time between birth and death is limited, and none of us know how much we have. We know that we are infinitely finite, that for all that we can do, for as powerful as we are not without our own limits. And here too is the third part of imagining winning. The third part, the critical lesson of being able to cast forward visions of paradise that we live not just in the future, but right away, right now. This one is even more simple and sometimes seemingly more impossible than the first two. Among the many lessons to be had over the past month of protests and the past 6 months of protests and the past lifetimes of justice seeking that our religious tradition draws from, is a simple moment in which I caught myself a couple weeks ago sitting on a curb. It was late. Our current justice movement takes place at all times of day, but often that particular image of people out on the street happens later in the evening, a time when, quite frankly, I would rather be in bed. And so it was not surprising that I found myself feeling a little bit tired that day. And so I sat down on a curb during a teach-in when folks were sharing about both the economics of policing and the heart-centered impact of policing on the Black community here in Rochester. A time when people were sharing about their grandest visions for future possibilities and their closest heartfelt sorrows. I sat down on a curb and someone came by offering a tangerine. I love tangerines. You might also. I love the way their peels fall off. I love the ways in which each little segment can be peeled and eaten individually, but also they're small enough that you could, if you wanted, and I often do, pop the whole thing in your mouth as if it were a natural gusher or Capri Sun. I love tangerines, and this person who came by and offered me one so simply, "Are you hungry? Would you like one?" I said no to. I didn't come to protest to eat. I don't come seeking justice and bearing witness in order to feed my body, I thought, and surely somebody else needs it. A little while later, somebody else came by with a bag of chips, popcorners. I swear they haven't paid me for product placement in this sermon, but I love them also. They're deeply satisfyingly crunchy, and they come in many flavors, some of which are better than others. But I said no again. I don't come here to feed myself. A bit later, hearing these stories of paradise and pain, of suffering and salvation wrought in community, feeding myself of the story and power born in community. A third person came by, offering me a bologna sandwich, a couple of slices of deli meat and mayonnaise on white bread. I don't know what your vision of paradise is, but this certainly was not mine. And I did not expect to say yes, but having fed myself and feeling nourished by the stories, I don't know what overcame me. I said yes. And I sat there on the curb and I unwrapped this bologna sandwich that I didn't think that I would particularly enjoy. But it turns out, after all, I was hungry. Not just for justice, not just for peace, not just for a vision of equality and peace, but also just hungry for food, for a sandwich, for the ability to be in community and be fed, quite literally. I sat on that curb and I ate that sandwich, that best bologna sandwich of my entire life, and it was good. This third task of imagining winning is no particular puzzle, but it is one that can be challenging for many of us. This sense of being in relationship, this absolute inability to spiritually bypass what is hard in the here and now, requires that you, each of you and I, imagine each of us as the precious peanut of God that we are. It requires that each of us imagines us to be both powerful and vulnerable, both capable of impressive things in community and in need of support ourselves. I don't know what kind of justice seeker you are when you are hungry. I don't know what kind of parent you are when you are thirsty. I don't know what kind of friend you are when you are in such pain you cannot think straight. I know it's harder for me when all of those things are present. We cannot lose ourselves in the seeking of a better world and the relationship to ourselves, the one that demands that we not only indulge ourselves with a self-care that looks like capitalist consumption, but a self-care that sees each of us as truly worthy of ushering in paradise, that sees each of us as a harbinger of good things to come. I ask each of us, what support do you need? How can you begin to set that up? Not tomorrow, not this week, but today. The poet Morales's prayer ends with the demand that we do not waver, that we do not let despair sink its sharp teeth into the throat in which you sing. Escalate your dreams. Make them burn so fiercely that you can follow them down any dark alleyway of history and not lose your way. But here too is this. We must hold hands. We must share water. We must keep imagining. This is our sacred task. I ask each of you into the chat to imagine and name, either out loud or on the tablets of your heart, what is it that you will continue to pursue? What is it that you will build today so that you might be ever more worthy of ushering in paradise, ever more able to grasp a hold of your sacred imagination and play in it? What will you do today? Imagine winning, my friends. This is your sacred task. The other world that's possible is ours. Inscribe it on your heart. Invite it into your home. Cook it for dinner. Shout it from the rooftops. Tell your elected officials about it. Live, breathe, and rest in liberation and love. May it be so. Amen.
Please join me in singing Hine Matov Umanayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad.
Hine ma tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Shevet achim gam yachad, hine ma tov umanayim. Shevet achim gam yachad, hine ma tov umanayim. Shevet achim gam yachad, hine ma tov. Shevet achim gam yachad, hine ma tov. Shevet achim gam yachad, hine ma tov umanayim. Shevet achim gam yachad, hine ma tov umanayim. Shevet achim gam yachad, shevet achim gam yachad, shevet achim gam yachad.
Please join me in our unison words as we extinguish our chalice, as we close our time together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Lean with all your being toward that day. Lean toward paradise. When you inhale and when you exhale, breathe the possibility of another world into the 37.2 trillion cells of your body until it shines with hope. And then imagine more. Imagine more, my friends. Go in peace, go in love, go in sacred imagination. I love you. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.